we have already talked about the simple linear regression. What exactly the simple? So this is the formula for the simple linear regression is the beta naught plus beta 1 x. So these are the coefficient which we are interested to calculate. This is our dependent variable and this is our independent variable. In another format, anyone can like ax plus b or maybe mx plus b. So there are multiple ways of representing your baseline equation or maybe a simple linear regression. So standard way is we do usually notify using this particular line. So ordinary list square methods we have already seen. So right now we are going to see the problem statement of the sales and the advertisers. So sales is denoted as a X and Y is our advertising the data. So for that we are going to denote it as a Y. So also in another terms you can call it as a dependent variable. So sales and advertising data set that we are going to see. So that data set is already available over here. So this is the sales and advertising data set. So over here we have the sales value and over here we have the advertising values. So we are going to build a linear regression. So you already know that whenever we have the continuous dependent variable, so in that particular situation we can go with the linear regression. So the main assumptions of the linear regression is our dependent variable should follow or maybe should belong to the continuous variable. So that is already going satisfied over here. So we have our dependent variable as a continuous or maybe a numerical variable. In another terms, you can call it as a numerical variable. I'll just come to the cost function later on. Let's just understand how exactly we can proceed in a Python if we want to build a relation between the sales and advertising dataset. So this is the particular dataset which I already show you over here. These are the necessary libraries. So whenever we are going to work on any machine learning project, so these are the like necessary libraries you can consider. NumPy is always used for the mathematical operation. Pandas is used when we want to load the data set and do the some manipulation on that particular data set. Matplotlib library is something new library for you guys. You haven't seen that before, but Matplotlib library, you can see that over here we have the terms as a plot. So obviously this particular library is used when we want to actually plot a specific values or maybe a data. So the purpose of Matplotlib is only if we want to plot something or maybe instead of just visualizing the data in a tabular format or maybe in a table or maybe in an Excel, we can still visualize that particular data in a Python. And if we want to do a data visualization in a Python, we must use this matplotlib library. So as I said, the for the NumPy we have the nickname or maybe a nomenclature as NP. For the pandas we have PD. Similarly for the matplotlib we have the PLT. So this is the like standard notations you can see which we use when we are importing the library. So this is something that importing library you will see throughout the entire machine learning projects. Inline is basically just a backend of that particular matplotlib. It will give us the like very cool way or maybe cool visualization of a matplotlib library. So only for that particular purpose we use this inline. So it's just nothing but more complicated to understand. So the data set we have already explained that data set contains the sales and advertising expenditure. This particular data contains this is the like 36 months of data set, and we have the monthly data set for the sales and advertising. So little bit explanation of what exactly this data is already on that particular site. It's actually extracted from one of the research paper, and we can also download this txt file in our local machine, or maybe we can load directly data from this link as well. Suppose I want to just download this data. Whenever I open this, I can just press Control S and it will just directly ask me to save. So I can just save. I already have stored it with the name of sales, so I'll just replace it cells 1 and then txt. So this is how you can store this data. You just need to see, press the two commands on your keyboard is a control S, so that way it will get stored. Or maybe you can directly download this data in your Python. So we will see the both the ways of loading the data. One of the way is you can consider instead of path, I'll just replace this with URL. So whenever we want to load a specific data in a Python, we can load either text files or maybe CSV files or maybe Excel files. So how exactly we can load dataset in a Python using pandas library that we have already discussed in our previous sessions. So we are going to use the pandas library. In the pandas, we are going to use this function as a read CSV path of that particular data set. So I already have this data set in my directory. You can see over here sales.txt, and this particular data is basically separated by space. So you can see over here we have the it's not basically separated by the tab, so it's separated by the multiple space. So if the data set is separated by the multiple space, we can denote this as a S plus. If the data is separated by the tab, you can write something like this. If the data set is separated by the comma, you can write something like this. So this is how you can read a data sets in your Python. So you just need to understand in what format your data set is actually separated, uh, and do your data set has the header or not. So right now, this particular data set don't have the any headers over here. If we just ignore the header from here, so you can see what exactly you are able to see over here. Like this first value is by default considered as a header. So this is not actually our headers, or maybe column names. Header means nothing but the column names. So that's why I have put over here as a none value. So with the help of that, you will get the default header values as a 0 and 1. If I just remove this say SEP, so you will able to understand that all the values I will be able to get in just a single column. So I do not have the two columns here over here, because I haven't separated or maybe read the entire data properly. So I do know that these particular values are separated by the some space. So that's why I use this S plus. So that way you can read the data properly, that two columns are actually you are able to see in a different thing. So you can just have the trial and error using this tab, or maybe sometimes it looks like we have tab separated data, and whenever we load this tab separated data, it will again come this as a single column. So with the help of that, you are also able to understand that this is not a tab separated. Over here it looks like a tab separated. Tab separated means suppose I type something, for example 12, and then I just press tab in my PC. I think so in a Jupyter notebook I won't be able to use the tab command, but you can try somewhere else. So over here we have dataset separated by space. Using the URL you can load. So instead of just downloading that data using the control S, you can directly load that data using URL as well. So this is the URL, and I just pasted URL over here and the separated data. So this is also another way. So we'll see the some of the exploratory analysis or maybe understanding of our data set. So in our data set, we have the 36 observation and two columns. So if we want to check how many observation and column we have in our data set, we can simply use this df.shape, which is pandas command, which or maybe a pandas functionality, which can give us the understanding of how many columns and how many rows. So usually when we are talking about, or maybe whenever we are dealing with the machine learning projects, we need to understand in what format we have the data set, or maybe how many observations and columns we have. So columns means our dependent or maybe independent variables, and the row means observation. So you can see over here, for example, I want to print the top five values. But if I want to print the top five values, I can simply use the tf dot head. So you will get the top values. So over here you can see you have the multiple rows. We have the 36 rows and the two columns. So but you can also do the sample. So sample is the very popular command, that like sometimes what exactly happens, like using only a head we won't be able to understand all our data. Probably all the top values are somebody has already put it, or maybe whenever they are doing the data entry jobs or maybe something, so at the top somebody just do their work properly. But if we want to check any random values in our data set, you can consider the at the fifth index, 13, 24, 19, 35. So all those values are coming over here. So using the sample you are actually able to understand how your data set looks like, instead of just going with the head or maybe tail will just give you the top or maybe a bottom far top head values or maybe a bottom values. But sample is something that is pretty interesting. Another one is over here, it looks like 0 and 1. So it doesn't look very properly, or maybe it's hard to understand which one is the sales variable and which one is the advertising variable. So we already have seen how exactly we can rename our column labels in our pandas session. So we just need to use the like df dot columns, and I have posted over here. So that way it will just replace the column names. We can see that 0 and 1 is replaced with the sales and advertising. So this is how you can rename your column labels. The pandas info is another function which will help you to understanding the all the variables. So in my dataset, I have just two variable. One is the sales and another one is the advertising. So the data type of those variable is a float. So you can see that those are the float values. So if you want to check or summary in terms of how many columns, how many rows, and even if for the each and every column, in what format you have. Do you have the categorical variable, numerical variable, float, integer? So all those functionality you can able to visualize over here, and based on that you can take a proper or maybe appropriated actions. So these particular functionalities like understanding the data set, visualizing the data set, understanding how many rows, how many columns. So this is the necessary steps whenever you are going to work on any machine learning projects, that will give you the proper insight. Instead of just looking the data set in Excel, you can still that load that particular data in your Python, and you can still visualize your data set using these basic stuffs. So describe, we already have discussed what exactly the meaning of describe. So describe, oh, you can see over here, we have the sales and advertising data set. So count means how many observation we have is a 36. Mean value for the sales is 24. Advertising, we have this one, standard deviation. We have 6. So you can also think something like that. Standard deviation is not close to 0. It means that there is some variation is available in our data set, and it's good to go with the whatever data set we have. Suppose if one of the variable has the very less standard deviation, so we probably need to ignore that variable. So these are the things that can help you understanding. So over here you can see that the mean and the uh, median is almost looks like a same for the sales. So you can say that it's somehow belonging into the normal distribution. Over here mean for the advertising is 28 and the median is 23. So you can consider the mean is greater than median, so it's more like positively sorry it's more like uh, rightly skewed data set or something like that. You can and have the understanding using this describe function. So dependent variable and independent variable we have already discussed, and these are the different notations for the independent variable. You can call it as an input variable. We always define this particular variable as a x. You can also call it as a feature variable or maybe a predictor variable. So these are the different names usually we use when we are talking or maybe understanding the any particular data set. And for the dependent variable, you can call as a dependent variable or maybe output variable, target variable, or maybe a response variable. So these are the different names for the dependent variable, or maybe our interest of variable is also another name. So our interest of variable is the variable that we are interested to calculate using the known values. So these particular variable is a known, and this particular variable is a unknown. So you can also consider this in that particular way. So this is how we can convert our entire data set. Like we do know that in a DF we have the cells in our first column, and in advertising we have in our second columns. So if we want to convert this into the X and Y with the help of values, so we have just created the two different things. Like X means here we have all the independent variables, and Y means we have all the dependent variables. So we need to separate out our data set into the dependent variable and independent variable, and this is how we can do that using a Python. And if we want to print over here, we have see, like wherever we have the data set, we usually plot this data set something like that. On the x-axis we have the independent variable, and on the y-axis we have the dependent variable. So this is how our scatter plot or maybe looks like. So we have plotted the same thing using matplotlib. We have used the plt command or maybe nomenclature of the matplot. Then we use the scatter, like because we are going to do a scatter plot, so that's why we use the scatter over here. And what exactly we are going to do, so x is our uh, independent values and y is our dependent value. So we want to do that x is in the cells is our independent value. You can consider this as a x, and this is the y. So over here you can write something like that, x. So x is over here and y. So this is nothing but I'm just giving the label to the x and the label to over here as a name, and the location, legend location means length of the, like length actually from here to here. So something like that we can pass over here. And plt show is nothing but it just running all the above mentioned commands. So title is something which we can give over here. So you can change the title with any names over here. And this is the main command. So in the main command we just need to whenever we are doing a scatter plot, we should pass all the numerical or maybe a continuous variable, and we can able to pass the two values, so x and y. So I want a scatter plot between the x and y, and color is color for the all the these particular values could be a blue, and label of that particular is a scatter plot. So over here you are able to see the label of this pointers or maybe a dots. So this is how you can plot using a matplotlib. So it looks like the same over here. And using a linear regression, we are going to calculate the this best fit value using the ordinary least square method. So it just right whenever we are working on Python or maybe something. So whenever I am saying that we are going to calculate the linear regression line using the OLS or maybe some functionality, it's just a black box. So you are unable to understand what is happening in that particular black box, because we are going to use all the Python libraries. So everything is happening, or maybe all the functionality, how to calculate or maybe how to choose the values and all other these particular formulas which I have mentioned over here, it just already defined in the backend library of the sklearn. So you can consider the machine learning is always a black box. All the things are happening in the backend, and we are just able to see the some output in the front end. So this is how we can check the dimension of our x and y values. So right now we have just two values in our like it's just a single value, or maybe just a single independent values for the x and y. So that's why we are able to get the shape over here as a 36. But we do know that like when we are talking about the matrix, we should have this shape something like that, 36 cross 1 for the x. shape has to be for the x is this one, and similarly for the y1. So after the reshaping, we are able to see this particular shape. So I'll just run uh, from the top so that you can able to understand the difference between these shapes. So over here you can see that like over right now I have just a shape something like that this, but we do not. For the matrix we need this like 36 row observations and one column, and same for the x we need the shape of 36 uh, observations and rows you can consider, and one column. So if we want to do that, we already have seen the reshaping function in a numpy, so using that we can do the reshaping. So that will always convert into the reshaping of 36 comma 1. So prior to that we were having this shape, and right now we have this shape. So this is required if we are going to work on. But when we have the multiple values in a x, or maybe multiple columns, or maybe multiple linear regression, at that time we actually do not require to do that. It's just automatically considering this. But when we are actually dealing only with the one single feature for the x, so that's why we need to do this reshaping things.